Can't keep running away. Far Side, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, I love those old beats. How you doing? How's your evening? Or your day or your morning? It's been a couple of weeks. Taking a little season break. Um, if you're joining me this evening or this morning or wherever you are, this is the beginning of season 3. Yes, folks, we're starting our third year streaming here. And we've done a lot of great art and had a lot of fun conversations, and I'm excited to be back at it. I've got some fun ideas, things I kind of want to cover in season 3, so it promises to be a good one. You know, the stream's getting a little bit better, a little healthier every every time out, and every year we try to make things a little better, a little smoother, um, and it's getting better. So welcome. Let's see what we got here. Let me check a little stream health, make sure everything's good there. Looks like we're doing good, and we're doing good. All right, all right. Well, pull up a beverage. For me tonight, it's the late show. Art Dad's had a great day this afternoon. Um, Hanging with my son and his soccer team. We had our last game for the spring season, and we won't be back till fall for that. So, but we had a good game today, and it was a lot of fun. And things have been going well. Very blessed. I'm glad to see that the economy is starting to roll again. People are getting back to some new opportunities and maybe a little signs of growth. And of course, vaccinations, yes, are making it so we can get out there again and get out there and mingle. You know, it's good to be around people. We saw my folks, which we hadn't seen my folks for I guess, a year and 2 months or something like that. So, and we're seeing some other family coming up here. So it's just so good to be seeing the COVID thing kind of lighten up now. Although my hearts and prayers go out to India. It just looks awful, awful over there. So if we can help out, I don't know, in any kind of small way, I'd like to find a way to do something, because you think we got it bad here with all the things and modernization that we have here, but we don't have it nearly as bad as they do. Um, Awful stuff. So keep them in your prayers, and let's try to help each other out whenever we can. Anyway, so this evening, I thought I would try to do a little bit of brainstorming with some environments. Last season, we kind of got into our shepherd design, and the shepherd design was great. We explored a lot of different design issues and elements relating to the shepherd's design itself, armament. We did some color studies, um, some costume studies. Then we ended up doing the shepherd's horse, or sci-fi horse. And then we ended up doing some of the livestock designs for his herd. And then we stepped away for there a little bit at the end. We did the Medusa project, which was kind of fun. So I wanted to kind of start this season off with something that I haven't been doing very much of in the stream, which is a little bit more environment exploration. And I'm thinking specifically maybe about an environment or a domicile where our shepherd might live and might kind of call home, and um, maybe even neighboring barn, or maybe we'll just say a farm-like kind of thing. Although I'm not sure I want to do a farm-like thing, because our shepherd was somebody who might deal not so much in housing the livestock, but moving the livestock, I think was what we were thinking. So he may need to have something more rural, but it is a sci-fi theme, so I'm thinking sci-fi technology, but in a more rural setting. Now, I'm not sure if he would be in a standalone environment or if he'd be maybe on the edge of a small town or a gathering of buildings out in the middle of some wide open terrain. But I want to imply sort of a symbiotic relationship with the environment, with some obviously modern technology of sci fi, but then at the same time, kind of keeping it remote. Because our shepherd was somebody that would be moving livestock, things that might be bought and sold and traded across maybe great distances on this planet. And that's about as far as we got. So, it's inspiration, it's some ideas to toss around, and I just wanted to begin to explore a little bit of the environment itself, and then maybe a little bit of the a structure, a habitat, a place for this this shepherd to live. So, grab yourself a beverage if you want to draw along with me tonight. If you got some work of your own you're working on, let's spend some time together. You do your work, keep me on in the background. If you got your own tunes going or a movie in the background, and you just got me over here on your screen in the corner, that's fine. Wherever you have it. I don't generally play music on this just for proprietary reasons, but also we do a lot of discussion and talking. So I'd rather have that kind of stuff going on. So let's spend a little time and brainstorm together and see if we can build out this world, do a little world building for this shepherd, just as a place to start, kind of pick up a little bit where we left off. So I think what I'm going to do to start off is just to start off with a little bit of good old-fashioned graphite pencil. Nothing fancy here, a woodless pencil, which is nice because I can use the side or I can get up on the tip. And I like to use an HB because the HB sort of gives me the right amount of hardness where I can go light or I can press a little bit harder and get something a little bit richer. And it has a nice flow. And it doesn't tend to smear a lot. So it gives me that nice rich in between. I'm just going to start out sketching loosely on some just sketch paper. In this case, it's Canson. I like Canson a lot. And then I might switch over if I start doing some marker writing related stuff as I get into architecture. I like to work on some marker paper. This is some recycled marker paper, so it's a little bit discount, but that's fine for what I'm doing. It does have a little bit of the vellum in it, so it has that resist when you get into markers, and you can do some blending and that stuff. So I may switch over to some of that if we get that far. But I think for now I'm just gonna kind of warm up and just sketch here. So we've been gone for a couple of weeks with the end of the last season 2, and this is the beginning of season 3. So I hope you join me and I hope you come back. Just want to put a little plug out there too for my Discord. I have a Discord channel which you can check out there in the About page. There's a link and an invite. I'm encouraging people to join. I'm more than willing to communicate with people that way. You can get notified of me going live here, or if you maybe want some feedback or references or resources or anything like that. It's just sort of furthering the discussion of the stream here. So, all right. So let's make a little list here. Let's, like we do in the past, we like to kind of keep some keywords going here. So the key here, I think, is starting out is that we're going to be sci-fi. Ooh, got an interesting little bevel edge or something going on here. So a sci-fi setting, we know that. And we know that it's going to be remote. So this would probably be maybe not quite farmland, but wide open spaces. So got some wide open spaces, the kind of place that before we boxed all of our livestock into literally boxes, we'd let them roam in a valley where there might be a water source, I think that might be kind of important, is to think about where there might be a water source. What do we know about water sources? Well, water sources, where water is, things can grow. Where there's no water, it's very difficult to raise living creatures and animals. So we definitely want to be thinking about a water source. This could be maybe in the form of a stream for drinking. It could be a river. It could be some sort of reservoir. It could be maybe a natural lake. But these are all going to be fresh water, and I think that's the key here, right? So we need fresh water. What else we got? Wide open spaces, water source, stream, river, reservoir, lake. There also has to be kind of like a natural food source, right? So some of that might come back to us figuring out what our livestock would eat. Perhaps some sort of grain or grasses, maybe roots, things that they can rooting vegetables, things that they could maybe dig or munch on. So grains, grasses, roots, that's going to tell us a little bit about this environment, right? Natural food source, a water source. Now, depending on the weather, if the weather's extreme or if it's really cold or maybe it's really warm, we might be thinking about like protection from the elements. Are there trees? So we need protection. This could be some sort of maybe trees, natural growth. This could be maybe caves, or rocks. Caves or rock outcroppings. What else we got here? Trees, natural growth, caves, rock outcropping, someplace where an animal could get shade, right? Shade, and possibly to get out of the wind, or maybe to get out of snow or heavy rains. So I think one thing we have to figure out here is, what kind of, are we talking about the seasons? Does this planet have seasons? And how extreme is the climate? And what do we see the climate being? Is the climate snow? Is the climate desert? What would the climate potential be? So we could be looking at desert. We could be looking at snow. We could be looking maybe, and this would be more like mountains, I guess. This could be more flat. Mountains might be tough, but things like goats could maybe climb. But I think when we looked at our livestock, we were looking at something that was a larger, beefier kind of animal. So probably something a little flatter. But it could be a valley within mountains. And cattle can climb a little bit. Um, just not sure they could do the kind of really steep, rocky stuff. But maybe sort of a valley within the mountains, right? So I'm going to write some more notes over here. So I'm thinking, why notes? Why write, right? We're here to draw. We're here to make art. But words can foster more pictures. And sometimes keywords can foster more imagery in our head. So I'm thinking about a valley. getting to the keyword can save you a lot of time of drawing something that you don't use. And we're trying to work efficiently here. So we're thinking about staying on target and having a more clear picture before we start. So I'm picturing, there needs to be a valley, but I think there should be mountains or hills nearby. Okay, so valley, mountains, and hills. So this would be your sort of low spot, and these would be your high points. And then, of course, we talked about natural um, water sources. So maybe like a stream or a river, which would sort of flow here around mountains and hills. So if you have these larger mountains, then you have low spots. So we have valleys. Okay. So I'll begin to sketch and draw as stuff is coming to my brain. As I feel that I'm ready to take off and start making a picture rather than writing words, that's usually where the jumping off point is for me. Sometimes I go back to words. But one thing I do think would probably happen is the weather does get extreme. So I think somewhere in here, um, we want to say that it's going to get extreme. Give me one sec here. Just want to check something real quick. All right. Okay. Extreme weather doesn't mean we're never going to have a nice day. It just means it can get extreme. Highs, lows, really hot, really cold. So maybe we could explore a little bit of both of those. So I'm picturing, we have these kind of mountains, higher mountains. We could be sort of in the high mountains. Maybe some unusual peaks. And these might be our different ranges. This would be sort of the valleys where things are a little slower. This would be like your Everest. This might be like your Rockies. This might be like your Adirondacks. These would be like your foothills. So I like the idea that this might be someplace in the distance, but that's not where our guy is going to live, right? He's not going to live at the top of Everest. Too extreme. And the Rockies would probably be something he'd have to cover at some point. Maybe he gets better pay for that. The Adirondacks would be like lower mountain ranges where it's you're not changing a huge climate. So this might be more normal. This might be more like every day, with occasionally he might do something higher range like that. And then maybe he even lives somewhere in the foothills. So let's say he lives here. He lives in the foothills, gets a little bit out of the flatland, but he can come down to the flatland pretty accessible. This is where his herd is. So he could leave them down there. Maybe he has access to kind of going back and forth between living in the hills and existing down here in the valley. So maybe he lives up here. He has some sort of domicile where he's a little bit up and he can see the valley. That'd be it. He'll be up on the hill so he can see the valley where his herd is down below. And he can go higher if he needs to. And maybe, here's another idea too. He might actually have herds down below. So he might have a low herd, which he's keeping sort of in the actual valley. But he might have a higher herd, you know? He might have a herd somewhere up in here. So a high mountain herd of something. And they might be up here, and there might be little small valleys that are sort of cutting through the rivers like that. So we have lower and we have higher. Okay. All right, so that tells us a little bit about his lifestyle. So we're brainstorming here. We're getting some ideas. So now, what kind of terrain would we be looking at? Well, this is obviously you have a lot of grains that grow down below, right? So grain probably grows down here in the lowland. Grasses, probably more trees. We probably have rivers, bigger rivers, right? And that would mean bigger livestock could feed off of the rivers here. Where in the higher terrain here, if this is the low herd, which he's keeping in the valley down below with grains and grasses and trees and rivers, lots of food source, right? There's probably also lots of traffic though, right? So there might be lots of other folks around. And that could be good, that could be bad. There might be more other animals nearby. So there could be some dangers as he's trafficking his livestock. If you're joining, we're brainstorming this evening a little bit, talking about spaces and environment design, and we're talking a little bit specifically about a character we've been working with a little bit in Season 2. So we're getting back to building out the world, if you will, for a character that we started called the Shepherd from Season 2. And we're looking a little bit more where he might live and where he runs his business, and we're just getting some initial ideas so that we don't spin our wheels later designing something that isn't going to work for us, right? Okay, welcome if you're just joining. Sip of coffee, whatever it is you're drinking. Okay. So let's see. Hold on. Got my little one up, my co-pilot up here with me, staying up late. Now, in the higher terrain, so we're talking about the Rockies now, getting up here in the higher mountain elevations. Probably not grains, right? Grains don't grow in those high mountains, not hot enough, right? So what would be up there? Well, we know in the higher mountain regions there would be trees. There'd probably be some grasses, but there might be things like berries. There might be things like, certain kinds of fruits. Might be some elements of snow certain times of the year. And probably more like streams rather than rivers. So we'd be looking at a little smaller water feed. Now, why am I doing this? Why am I breaking all this stuff down? Because I'm creating a picture and I'm answering some of my own questions about where this guy would live, where a shepherd in a sci-fi world would call home and conduct most of his business of trafficking livestock or animals, right? Through the terrain. That's his expertise. He knows this terrain. So these are all the terrains that he knows how to move between. But they're all creating a picture, which might come down to something more personal to his specific living space. But you got to start big and work your way towards the detail. So we decided he would probably live somewhere between the edges of the foothills and maybe slightly larger mountains. Okay, so this is home. This is home right here. But he can move up if he has to. You know, it might even be kind of fun to think he might even have a higher residence somewhere up in the hills. Maybe he has a higher cabin where he could stay as a stopping point as he's moving stuff. So that might be a fun design later, is to do something with his cabin design up here in the woods. But this would be sort of his normal domicile down closer to the valley. That would probably also mean there might even be a city nearby, either a city or a township, probably down closer to the valley here. So we'll be looking at, you know, maybe looking at some of those spaces as well. Okay, so this is good. This is good. This is telling us. So where do we go first? What do we do? Do we draw the valleys? Do we draw his domicile? Well, I personally wouldn't mind drawing the valley a little bit, actually. Kind of taking a shot at this sort of an environment. So let's just start with a couple of preliminary sketches here. I'm just working in pencil, keeping it loose, maybe trying a couple of different views to break in here. I'm going to work really extreme widescreen here, like cinematic widescreen. And I'm going to keep my horizon line low. Although, if I want to see more of the valley, I probably want to get up a little bit. So maybe the view from where he lives, like someplace a little bit higher. So in that case, I think what I'll actually do is the reverse of what I just said, and I'm going to keep my horizon line a little bit higher. Now, that means that coming down through here, we're going to see a lot of the valley, right? So there might be like a river that comes through here. It's kind of a naturally flowing river that kind of comes through. And we can see in the background that there might be, you know, mountain ranges starting from the background, moving towards the foreground. So kind of blocking in. This is kind of showing a little bit of the change in elevation. Like in the distance, he might be up here, right? But this is way off in the distance, which means these are pretty big mountains. If they're that far away, they're that high above the horizon line, then we know, perspective tells us that scale-wise, that those are pretty big mountains. Now, the mountains probably continue. Right? So maybe we have kind of a foreground mountain here. Just working kind of towards the foreground. Maybe there's these little sense of mountains kind of curving down. Maybe over here we have some other mountains. So the river's kind of cutting through here. Okay, so this might be an example. So we have our little watershed kind of moving through. And this is sort of the life of the valley, right? Which means that all of our streams kind of feed in. Streams and water feed down and feed into the larger river. So the higher watersheds move down and move in. And so there might even be neighboring watersheds that kind of join. But it's okay. We're just kind of getting a sense of the world and a sense of where we are, which means we're a little bit higher now. So we might even be, you know, on some sort of higher mountain ridge right here. So we might be up here sort of for scale. Maybe we could we had our herder here. Standing up here, and he's up on this ridge. And he might have had his so he's looking down and he's seeing this kind of, maybe here in the river there's it splits, so there's a left side and a right side, and maybe down here there is a town near this river. Maybe not on the river, but maybe near the river. So maybe we do this. Let's take out, let's back off a little bit on this foreground one here. Give ourselves a little more space. So perhaps over here there are some structures, some signs of, it's kind of a big building here. Maybe there's another couple other little. Now it's sci-fi, so while it might feel like a Western, it might feel like someplace really remote. Maybe we got to use some shapes that give it a little bit more of a futuristic look. So these are more rounded shapes rather than, so there'd be a clustering. Some smaller ones. Just keeping it really loose at this point, because I'm just trying to see it. Not really trying to get too concerned with details, just trying to get a feel for the land. So there's some stuff over here. Maybe there's a few more structures, outlying structures. Edge of town, you know. Maybe there's even some other stuff over here on the other side. Hey, what's up, Raider? That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Some windmills. Ray, what's up, my man? Thanks for coming by, dude. Check out Raider 3000, everybody. That's my boy Ray, my friend. He's a great modeler, a great artist, good designer. Check him out. Follow him. Ray, you can drop your link in there if you'd like to, buddy. Go for it. Many props. Thanks for coming by. It's kind of the late show tonight, but you know, us art dads doing it late. But thanks for coming by, buddy. Yeah, I've been away for a couple of weeks because usually about May is when I end one season from the previous year, and I take a little small break and then I come back. So I've been away just for a couple of weekends, and I'm totally excited to start up again. This is my third year now streaming, so just taking a little break. How's things going over you? I see you're going hot and heavy on your stream. I get my notifications all the time, my man. I like that. Some windmills. That's a good idea. So let's see. This is a valley, right? We were talking about our elevation changes, and we were talking about the kind of where the winds would come, right? Obviously, the winds would move through the valleys here. Probably some winds up here in the higher mountains, but you know, these valley folk are probably wanting energy sources, and they have the river here, so we might even be able to build something into the river. Maybe like the river has a little bit of some structure over here. They're using it as a power source, you know, something along the edges of the river that sort of help power the town or something like that. And then, yeah, we could throw in some windmills too, maybe over on this side. We'll go kind of. Could have a few of these big guys help providing us with some power. Definitely maybe throw one over here, catching some of the winds that come through there, and they've got their little current of the stream powering their buildings, etc. So this is pretty good. Maybe we can give the sense that in the valley over here there's some more open space. Remember, part of what our guy is doing is he's a shepherd, right? So, you know, he's moving his livestock through this valley, or the creatures that he's trafficking. Maybe they're mountains. We talked about they might be higher mountain herd. There might be a lower herd. This would be the lower herd. So there has to be some open spaces, though, where they can feed. Maybe there's grain, you know, food sources that he can kind of move them across the river. Maybe he's over here, and then he can move them back over here, and then back into the open valley over there. So there's definitely some room for some wide open spaces. But I like this idea of like a little bit of a town over here. So that's pretty good. So then this is just sort of a beginning view of the lower herd, or at least of what the space might look like. And it's just one, okay? Probably should do more. But for now, we'll just kind of nail this one down. Okay, now let's go in with the higher one. Okay, let's do a little bit of the higher terrain. Ray, I love your models, man. I love what you're doing. I love what you're building. Good technique stuff. That's what it's all about, man. Process. Okay. So now we're over here. Let's make this the higher mountain terrain. So this one, we're pretty high up, but we're not showing the view from being high up. We're looking at a view looking up, right? So I think on this one, we keep a somewhat maybe mid to lower perspective, because we're going to be seeing gigantic mountains. Much, much bigger mountains. And in order to make those mountains feel big, we have to be small, right? We have to be closer to the ground. That keeps our perspective looking up, makes us feel kind of psychologically smaller. These mountains might be huge, so let's go with a little bit of a lower horizon line in this one. And that means that, you know, we're going to have some pretty gigantic, maybe I'll put one more dominant sort of mountain. And we're up in the higher terrain. So we're down here. And that means that our eye level, by the way, is down here, which means more of what we're looking at is looking up here. So we have some sort of rocks coming here. We're in a much higher terrain. And these might be higher mountain passes, right? So there might be these kind of plateaus. Maybe there'd be a little bit of a flat spot, like a plateau, a little small valley here up in the mountain ranges. But then these deep canyons, right? Which kind of go down here. Maybe we even put something a little steeper here. But we put these little plateaus. High mountain little valleys, high mountain little flat spots where the herd could go. And maybe there's another one over here on this side. So these little plateaus, little flat spots. Maybe over here we could show, this could be like maybe where we're beginning to see like a little high mountain village. So there's a little bit of a flat spot, and then the rocks kind of curl up there. And then we could show, maybe this is that cabin we were talking about. We were talking about maybe he had a cabin up here, a little bit the higher ranges. Just a little bit of a flat spot. You have a sense of maybe like some trails. Maybe there could be a little sense of a bridge, a small bridge that kind of traverses those distances. Maybe off in the distance there could be some sort of waterfall. That might be kind of cool. So like here's a stream. It's the edge of a cliff or something. So maybe off in the distance. So we can see that even though we're up in this higher elevation, there's a sense of water. And of course, we're going to have kind of the snow line, right? So there'll be a lot more stuff going on down here. Maybe we need to indicate some trees too. Not so much wide open spaces, so maybe we could incorporate some pines. Just keeping it loose, keeping it loose. I'm doing the old school hip hop tonight. Thanks, man. You know, I'm also kind of realizing I might be kind of small for people. This might appear a little on the smaller side. So I am going to try something here. Let's do this. Let's bring y'all in a little bit closer. Jump back over here. Got a little camera control. Here we go. Ready? Camera 1, camera 2. Camera 1, camera 2. All right, here we go. Let's go in. Let's go in for the zoom a little bit. Ready? Keep us in the center for a second. Ooh, there we go. Look at that. Zooming in. Sorry, it's a little jerky. There's no real camera operator. It's a button I'm pushing. The mystery behind the stream. It's a button. But let's get in there a little tighter. Yeah, there you go. Now we can actually kind of see what's happening here. Sorry, you guys. You know, I realize I'm drawn back here, and you guys are like, what the hell? I can't see. Everything's so small. Let's see. Sorry, I have to wait for the refresh to make sure I'm... Let's go for the extreme close-up. Waiting for the stream to catch up. Come on. Come on. One more? Oh, there's definitely a little delay here, so. You can count it 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I'll work here for a little bit, but if I need to go in more, maybe I will. Yeah, all right. Maybe get a little bit better. Okay. Just want to make sure I don't go off camera. All right. Sorry about that. Boring camera operator work while you're streaming. Got to be artist, you got to be a world builder, and you got to be a camera operator and a stream operator at the same time. All right. So our foreground elements, you can make, a little contrastier. Just kind of filling stuff in. So we got some tree line here. I think I may put a little more space in my canyon here. My plateau. High mountain plateau. There we go. It could be some rocky edges. Kind of keep some of this stuff sort of got some trees going on. Got our little domicile. I'll get in there with maybe something a little more detailed. Remember, things in the foreground tend to be a little darker, a little more contrastier. I love this idea over here of this waterfall. So, yeah, back here in the background, maybe there's this high mountain stream that spills over. Mountain here in the background. By the way, I was going to give a little plug. What did I hear? I was listening to NPR. And they had a really great interview with the creator of Soul, and they were talking about the storytelling and what the story was about and the search for the meaning of life, and very cool. I recommend you check it out and support your local NPR stations. So what were we? Okay. So a little more mountainous like this, but there's still these sort of high mountain passes. So I'm going to make these little call outs here. So these are going to be flat spots. Okay. Plateaus, maybe. And then we got the big peak of back here. That's your Everest, what we were talking about back over here. And a suggestion of mountains trailing off into the background, which is good. And then, of course, back over here, maybe we got this waterfall. So we got a little bit of a waterfall action happening. Now it's just some preliminary points of view. That's all we're doing here, right? Snow line, that might be good to indicate too. So we got a little bit of the snow line, we got big peak, we got waterfalls, and we've got our little cabin over here. Make sure I'm on camera. See, this is the problem when I zoom. Sorry, guys. Get a little bit off of the camera, and then I'm like, wait a minute, doofus, you're drawing off screen. Maybe turn a little bit. There we go. Okay, yeah. So this is our cabin. This is where our herder maybe can bring the herd, get hang out, sleep for the night. He's got these little plateaus. Probably wouldn't bring livestock over a bridge. Maybe though, depending on the size of the livestock, right? But we got the snow line, so things definitely, we get a sense of elevation as we're adding some more of that stuff. Okay, so we've got the low herd. Let me back out here a little bit, because now we're talking a little more about. There you go. So we're talking about the low herd here. And now we're talking about the high herd. And we're getting a sense for, these spaces. Now, these are just initial break-ins and initial thumbnails just to give me a sense of atmosphere and perspective and points of view. But now it's more about further exploration of one of these. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. The boy is putting himself to bed. I let him stay up a little late. It's Saturdays. Papa's a little nicer. But he's going to go to sleep. What a good kid. All right. He's had a whole evening of building Minecraft. So we're doing lots of world building here in this house. All right. Well, this is good. So we kind of have some ideas down. So I think what I'm going to do now is I want to investigate the low herd. Okay, I want to investigate the lowlands here a little bit because this is probably where he's going to have a house. So I want to explore a little bit more of like where his house might be. And I think, rather than him being somebody who's in the heart of the town, I picture his house being, maybe over here. He's sort of on the hillside. He's up a little bit. He can see the lowlands. He can see his herd. He can see the town if he needs to go in. But he's not in the heart of town. His business is not being conducted in the commerce of the town. He goes into town for business, but he doesn't need to be there all the time. He probably prefers the silences. If you think about his character, he's a herd. He's a shepherd, right? So what do we know about shepherds? Well, we'd probably know that they are loners. Why? Well, because they spend a lot of time alone, right? They're probably more at ease with animals than they are with other human beings or other intelligent creatures that way. So they probably, prefer animals, wide open spaces, wilderness. They're masterful traffickers, so they understand the terrain a lot in the wilderness. So this is their specialty. But that's not a person that spends all their time in the city, right? That's a person that spends all their time in the wilderness. So they're hikers, they're backpackers, they're people that know how to survive. Survival. That might be another one. Now, they've also got to be kind of good with animals, right? So they might be, I don't want to say farmers, but they are kind of like a cowboy, I guess, in a way. So they have to have that bravado, which we definitely talked about in the design that we were working with last season. And they do frequent towns and visiting spaces where they're delivering their product, right? So they do deal with people, and they have to come in town, and they can't look like total mountain men. So, but they are rugged and tough, but at the same time, they clean up well. All right, so I'd like to explore this space a little bit more, and I'd like to explore the hillside and maybe a sense of what the dwellings might look like in a futuristic looking town, right? Remember, we got to remember this is sci-fi. But it is the outskirts, so it's not super slick, but they do have technology. All right, so let's take this one off. Let's maybe sketch a little bit more. And then I might actually try some marker related stuff too. But I think for the first couple here, I'm just going to get a sense for what one of these hillsides might look like. So I'm going to build a little bit of a space. And you know, I could put it in a frame, but I don't have to. I mean, sometimes you can design environments directly by going in with um, frames and borders, much like you're doing a shot for something, in which case the aspect ratio is very important. But I don't want to limit myself to, while I'm thinking about the design of something, to the shot. So, you know, if it helps to have a little bit of a shot, you know, we could do that, you know, maybe to start off. Now I'm going to do something probably widescreen again, right? And I know that I'm probably going to do something with a really low horizon line, like maybe even off the page. And that would mean that, you know, we're kind of looking up here. So, you know, if we're looking up at something and we're looking up at sort of the foothills, this might be like a hill that we're looking up at. So if we're down here and we're looking up on this hillside, what does this hillside look like? Does it have layers? Are things kind of moving up? And if we're looking up, where do we see his domicile? Maybe it's nestled in some rocks here. I like that. So we're looking up, we're down below here, and maybe we get a little glimpse of his hut. It's not the highest point, but he's tucked into a high spot. I like that. So like if this is the valley, right? And way over here we see there's a little sense of the river. So he's up here in the hills, which means that he's looking down here. So this is the valley. Down there. And that this might be his house. It's sort of immersed in rocks, rocky terrain. Or maybe just even a hillside. Right? Which means, you know, there's these kind of plateaus where and then we see it drop off. So we can see that he gets a view. You know, if he stands out here, you know, he gets a view looking down at the valley there. Okay. So we're up in the hills like that, and we know there's big rocks. Maybe we even have to put some bigger rocks. A sense of a really more like he's immersed in the rocks. Okay. So now I'm going to move off of this, and I'm going to kind of take a drawing of this a little bit larger. This is just to kind of help me get the point of view, looking up, low horizon line. So we're down here, right? And we're looking up. We're looking up. So, you know, just to start off, I might try something like this. So this is that cliff where he's at, right? Behind him, there's more rocks. And so maybe his domain working again with those circular shapes, more futuristic. Now the rocks will have, oddly enough, will be the more angular, jaggedy kind of thing, but his domicile will be sort of immersed and have this little slightly more rounded look. This is our sci-fi edge. I mean, somewhere in there you have to imply sci-fi, right? So we have a little bit of a mountain here in the background. You know, maybe there's even more mountains here in the background. But he's up on this plateau. He's up on this ridge. Maybe we don't even see the whole thing. Maybe there's a little bit of this ridge kind of coming down here in front of us. But we can tell that he's kind of tucked in inside the hillside like this. Just kind of creating a sense of some rocks behind him. He's got a real strong fortified structure, a little bit tapered towards the roof, so water kind of drips off, but it creates a little bit of shade for him too. Might have a little bit of shade. Maybe his doorways are over here. These might be some windows. We have a sense of, maybe he's doing some sort of workout here outside of his house. There might be, maybe he has a little bit of an antenna, maybe for measuring precipitation, something like that. Or maybe he's got, something a little more long range. This is how he gets his Hulu and his Netflix. Yeah, Soul was great. I loved it. Pixar, they're saying a story is God, right? So, and it is true. The more they stick to that, the more lasting and meaningful their work is. And it's just been so great over the years watching them get better and better. Amazing. It would be the opportunity of a lifetime to be able to work with folks doing stuff like that. Okay, maybe we could do a skylight, right? There could be a little bit of a bubble here. So that lets natural light into his house. I'm kind of digging this. And so from a distance, it'll look a little bit like he's blending into the rocks, but it's got a little angular to it, but it's also smart, right? It's sci-fi, it's futuristic. So it's got technology, but it blends right in also. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow here. Maybe a little bit of a doorway. There's some small stuff going on here too. Maybe there's even another kind of a deeper well inside the mountain. So there's like a small tunnel that he can take that goes into something inside the mountain, or maybe just a second building here. This might be the main house, and then maybe there's sort of a secondary thing. And then maybe he's also got like, he needs a water source, right? So a water source, he could either trap from waters inside the mountain, so that maybe this is sort of a well situation. So he could be drilling. There could be some sort of, drill here that goes down into the rock. To like maybe a lower plateau of water. So this is the water level down here. So this would be like our drill. And the drill kind of spirals and sort of taps here, and then we feed water that goes into some sort of storage tank. This is like a water level. I think they call that like a water table. Okay, so then maybe this pumps the water up, which it has to be pumped higher, by the way, to a pumping station. So then maybe up a little bit higher here, we'll add another little rock up here, there would be more of a smaller well or his water source. And it would be sort of gravity fed, right? So it'd be gravity fed. And so the water would sort of pump into the house, keep the water up here. This will be the water up there. And then that feeds down into his house and maybe into his pumping station. So there'll be a pump station. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit. Sorry. Bring you a little closer for the action here. Give you a little closer shot of what's going on. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep you guys so far away there. So we're kind of looking at the shed, at his domicile, a pump station, and we're talking about the watershed would be up here. And that would feed down into this space. Now, what does he need to get rid of? Shit flows downhill, right? So you're building an environment like this, then you know that you're going to want remains, dirty dishwater needs to flow into some sort of tank, right? So let's say that there's going to be probably some sort of tank reservoir that might be drilled in down here underneath all this. Now, this was probably something that they, drilled down here. Probably drilled. But we've got some pipes which will fill sort of, I guess what would be sort of like a septic tank, right? Let's go to the internet for a quick second, just to see if there's anything we need to know about septic tanks. Not that I'm going to spend a bunch of time here, but I kind of want to get a look at what they look like. Always good to know. Maybe there's some very nice diagrams about how septic tanks work. Always good to do your research, right? So kind of taking a look. So you got kind of wastewater. There's the lower parts, the solid material. They separates the water and the solid material. There tends to be a top scum layer. I'm not going to completely detail out a septic tank, but looks like there basically is probably a ventilation of some sort. Not that I have to necessarily show that, but there might be water has to come in, it has to be pumped out. So let's say that it's draining here. So this is a septic tank or a septic reservoir. And it could either dump out someplace downstream here or maybe it could be pumped out. I'm guessing maybe they even in the future they'll have some sort of system where this could drain down. But one very important thing to note here is that you can't have your wastewater, going into your water table. Now, the position of our water table and our water source, by the way, the water source might come from uphill or it might come from in rather than down. So I'm drawing it as down, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, just as long as the septic drains in a slightly different space. Not exactly the glorious stuff we're drawing and all the cool concepts, but just something to think about. And again, you don't have those conversations with yourself, you don't really get there. All right, so I'm liking this. I'm going to come back to more of the exterior stuff a little bit later on, but I think that for now, let me back out. I think for now, what I'm going to do is maybe go in a little bit closer now. And I'm going to do a little bit more with the building now, just to kind of begin to get a floor plan, maybe to get a little bit of some architectural experimentation with that. I'm going to leave this page for notes and anything else that may come up here. All right. So this is looking good. This is so we'll say Shepherd's home. And we'll call this the main. Okay. All right, so we'll come back to this. Okay. Now, on this next one, I think what I'm going to do is a little bit of I'm going to switch mediums here. The loose stuff is going to get a little bit tighter now. So I'm going to move my paper over. Actually, I'm going to take one sheet, maybe two, of my cheaper sketch paper here. And then I'm going to work with some of my marker paper over the top. Again, this stuff is I just use the recycled marker paper. You can buy the really expensive marker paper, but I'm not doing the finished product in markers. So for me, just as long as it has a resist, and when you're using markers, you know, they're basically alcohol with pigment in it, and alcohol is the vehicle, and it sort of moves the pigment through the head of the marker, and then it evaporates, right? And then you're just left with pigment. So it does have to be a surface that will take a wet medium over it a little bit until the alcohol dries. The other advantage too, if you're working on something like vellum, or if you're working on marker paper specifically, which marker paper is sort of like a hybrid of vellum and bonded paper kind of put together. So it gives you the resist of vellum, but it gives you the brightness of the white. Otherwise, if you're going strictly vellum, you're working on like almost a very thick, plasticky, almost tracing paper kind of quality, which some people really like that. I mean, that's like, I don't like to go that transparent, and I'm not doing that much tracing and working over the top, so the transparency is less of the issue. It's more about having a material that will resist the marker a little bit, which allows you to blend, and it gets smoother blends. Not that that's totally what I'm after, but that's the advantage of using marker paper versus just using any old paper. You know, bonded paper will soak up your markers, and you'll go through markers a lot quicker too. That's another thing. So give me a second here. First of all, sip of the tea or coffee. Take a small little break. All right. Stay hydrated, folks. So let's do this. So I'm going to just tape up my sketches in front of me. So I'm kind of keeping those present. That's just keeping this one sort of off to the side. So I'm thinking here as I'm designing, keeping those ideas out. Good to always have these things out in front of you. Ideas get sparked, etc. Okay. The other thing is I need a little bit of tape to maybe tape my marker paper to this bonded paper. Now that's not because of the marker. That's because even my marker paper, which here I'll show you this again. I like the Canson products because I like the tooth, and they offer a pretty good discounted price. But this is sort of like recycled marker. But I like it. By the way, marker paper is not generally two-sided. So if you are somebody working on marker paper or new to marker paper, then remember that it's not two-sided. It's one-sided. both sides are not the same. So one thing I like to do, and I always tell my students this too, is to put a little X on the side. Go through a couple of sheets that you're thinking about working with and marking the side, because boy, once you tear it out, it's really tough to tell the difference between which side is which until you put the marker on it, and then it's too late. So put a little mark there. All right, so I'm going to tear off a sheet of this stuff. And what I like to do, because I like the brightness, I don't have to, I could let you can see the darker background on my table here underneath. It just grays it out a little bit, which if that's what you like, fine. But sometimes I like, if you put a little piece of white paper behind it, you get a much brighter image. I actually grabbed 2 sheets of those. Sorry. You get a little bit of a brighter image. That's all. So you can kind of see right there. It's like, it's a little bit grayer, a little bit whiter. And this has a nice cream to it, which I really like that. So I'm just going to take a little piece of paper. This is totally just my thing. If this is not you, or you don't have all these materials or whatever, that's fine. Work on whatever you got. This is stuff that you work with the stuff over the years and you find things that you like. By the way, I also work more days than not digitally these days, but I think one thing I really like about coming to the stream is I give myself a chance to have fun with the natural materials, natural mediums, which for me, I really like the natural mediums. But honestly, deadlines don't always permit me to work in natural medium. It's an edit thing. It's digitizing it, sending it off, making changes. And you can do it in natural medium, but you have to build an extra step of converting it to the digital. So sometimes it's just faster to work digitally. But in situations like this where I'm setting my own speed, then I don't need to work at anybody's pace except my own. Okay. So I'm looking at that design over there that we just did, this idea of kind of a rounded shape, right? A rounded shape building. So I think first one I'm going to do is maybe more the outside, like an outside view of this thing. Now it's a round building. I'm going to work in some markers here. And actually, what I think I might do is I'll use the gray one first. This is just a 10% cool gray. And in this case, I'm looking at that design. Okay. And I had a little bit of this kind of sloping side. A little bit of the sloping side. And a sort of secondary curve. So it's almost, it's kind of funny, but it almost looks like a mushroom. Wasn't really my intention, but... And then I kind of had this idea that maybe there would be a doorway. It's funny, this kind of makes me think more of a yurt. It's almost tent-like. But I'm sure this thing would probably go up or down. The other thing we have to pay a little attention to is scale, right? So if this is a door, and I'll say that this is the front door. It's not tiny. It can be probably opened up wider, but I'm looking at a human scale is probably someplace. I'll put my little guy maybe over here just for scale. So this would be his sort of domicile here. Okay. And it goes like into the mountain. A little bit underneath here. Now what I will do is I'll jump over here and I'll use this warm gray for the sense of the rocks in the terrain, right? So the terrain might be here. And actually, just for future reference, there might even be, a sense of rocks coming through here in the foreground. But you can see the way the marker's taken to the paper. This would not do this on bonded paper. It would totally soak in. You get these chunky streak marks, and this is not something that you want. Marker paper will allow the marker to stay on the surface a little bit more. Just to giving us a sense that there are other mountains behind too, I had a little sense of so I can see that he's nestled. So there's other sort of mountains coming in. He's sort of nestled in the mountains there. Okay. All right, I'll go back to my other marker for. Now I'm not going to, I'm just going to take it slow. I'm gonna find the shape language. I like this kind of elliptical quality. A lot of circles, but I need to incorporate elements of some technology too. So this might be in the form of, like we were talking about, maybe some skylights. Maybe if we were talking about a sense of technology that he has sort of coming off the house, creating a little dimension with my shadow here. On the roots right now. Old school. Love the roots. Hey, we're hosting the Dodgers in town this weekend. Their pitching is phenomenal, by the way. Killing us, shutting us down. I mean, we're still in first place, but not by much. Dodgers have some tough pitching. Okay. Maybe we were talking about an elliptical window. So the eyes of the viewer, right? So that you got to figure that these are people in here. If this is the scale of a person going in, then we got to keep the windows maybe low enough to where they can kind of see. Some smaller windows. Maybe there's a little bit of a larger window here. There's also maybe the feeling that this chamber goes to that second piece, which we were talking about up there, to the pump station. And, there might even be some higher feeling of the well up here. It's not my focus, so it's okay if it kind of blends in there. Okay, so a little bit of the well up here. So there might be little. Maybe he's got stuff stored around the outside. So I don't know what might be out here. Might be storage sheds. Maybe there's an underground piece over there. Maybe he's got some sort of kind of goes around there. Oh, we talked about maybe the idea of some sort of satellite dish. A lot of sun beating down. Probably not going to be too dark. Lighter in the terrain, unless we're absorbing heat. But this isn't the higher elevation one, right? Okay. So we'll keep this kind of lighter, but more or less the same kind of terrain. Give a little texture to it. Not exactly sure what this. Maybe he's got some sort of, he grows stuff on the roof. That might be good. He could have soil on the roof, right? Sustainable garden or something. So things that are going on the surface here have to begin to describe the curvature. So anything on the surface is really sort of describing the curvature of the wall. Whether it becomes an actual thing or whether it's just used to show contour, it's okay. We're just brainstorming at this point. Okay, there's probably little bits of technology involved here. So maybe there's like a little light that's above here. Maybe he's got sort of a walkway that kind of comes out the front where guests can stand. Maybe guests show up and they have to, feed or park their vehicles. Maybe if they're riding something, maybe he gets up here because there can't be a lot of vehicles. You can only get to this place either by a flying vehicle or by hiking up. So maybe there's some sort of, I don't know, stable or hitching post where you tie things off. I like the idea that this all kind of tucks into this bubble shape, kind of aerodynamic, right? What else would we need to have up here? Maybe a few more little antenna things. I'll throw a little bit of line in here because these might be glass. So I could put a little bit of a highlight on those. Maybe he's growing something, a little shed over here, storage facility. Maybe this has got a little bit of a door. So it's a bigger building than it might first look. I mean, if this is their scale, right? This is the size of our building here. So let's detail this out a little bit more. So usually after I marker something in like this is where I'm going to go in with something a little bit more detailed. In this case, I'm going to probably just use some graphite. Just give this a little bit of a sharper point. How you guys doing out there? You keeping up on your work? Pretty good? Thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it. Good to have you. Welcome back if you've been here before. My boy Ray there. Check out Raider 3000 if you want to check out some cool 3D modeling techniques. Watch a master think there. That boy's got lots of talent. Again, a little plug out there. I am on Instagram if you want to follow me. I'm Trey Gallaher. As you can see the name there. Instagram, all the Trey Gallahers, as I like to say. Art by Trey Gallaher if you're on Facebook. Do a little bit of tweeting, mostly Instagram. Oh, and if you're catching this on the rerun on Twitch, all my streams get backed up to my YouTube page. So you can always go there and watch previous seasons and previous episodes that are kind of leaning up to this, if you're interested. You know what? Before I do this, I'm going to do one more shade darker. Now, this marker here that I was using, this is like your 10%, right? Really, really light. I'm going to go in just a smidge darker, just so that I can begin to separate something that's texture versus something that's in the shadow. So I'm gonna come in here with something a little bit darker. This is gonna put a little more separation there. And I'm thinking about this as more like to help give it a little bit of dimension. Ground things out a little bit. And I can come back in with shadows a little bit more later, but maybe a little dimension to the windows. J5. I love J5 so much. Jurassic 5. What are you guys listening to tonight? Little C5. Just for the darky darks. Kind of accentuate the silhouette a little bit. I'm not too worried about, all the functionality of everything. We'll get there. We're working towards the detail, right? Okay. I'm going to come back to my 10% for a second. I'm going to bring down just to create a little separation between something that has tone and is in the light versus something that maybe is on a side plane. And so this is a little more of a side plane here. So And then that allows me to begin to create a little separation of the roof, so the roof looks a little bit lighter. Also, maybe we can drop in a little bit of tone, little separation of the building to what's behind it, right? So I'll darken a little bit of the ground plane here. Just like a 30%. Ooh, getting the nice squeaky squeaks. Love that. Little separation here too. A little bit of this rocky terrain. Trying to create a little separation between the textured stuff and then when I get into the details of my building here. One thing nice about the Copics, I like the sketch ones because you get the chisel tip, which is good when you really need to burnish, you know, get in there and really press and get a nice flat contact. But if you want to work softer, you can kind of lift a little bit and get a little more, almost like a watercolor brush. A little more variety of tone. Just gives you that little bit of just for a little separation. Okay. All right, now let's go in with some pencil work. Let's go in with some detailing stuff. Now we're just rolling with this, making it up as we go, getting ideas as we draw. But now I'm kind of defining things a little bit more with a sharper pencil. And this is going to clean up our drawing a little bit too. It's going to make us kind of get into the nitty-gritty. So I like the idea that maybe we've got these kind of contour textures. I think of maybe something that almost reminds me of like a grass hut. It's not maybe really grass. It might actually have a texture, but it resembles it. It's more organic looking. I don't know what all these things are necessarily, but they're signs of man-made intelligent structures that break up the landscape a little bit more. You know, you're kind of starting out by following the lines that you started with in the sketch really loose, but you're also deciding what you're going to keep and what you're going to lose. Maybe beveling a few edges. Not getting too mechanical yet. Although, if you need a straight edge, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're really certain that it's going to be a straight edge and you want it to be a straight edge, this is why we have straight edges, right? I might do one here just to kind of emphasize a little bit of the roof line, just to give myself a little something crisp. You go over the top of some of these little guys. I know I want them straight, and there's just something that mechanical drawing gives you that you just can't really do with freehand. There is a subtle difference that the eye will pick up that you just can't do with the freehand. Although, you know, you can definitely practice your strokes for stuff that, for making straight marks. I mean, straight marks are definitely a good skill to practice, you know. Best way to do those kinds of things is to do things like making a mark and practice kind of connecting them visually. The other thing is when you're drawing, if you're doing a freehand drawing with your hand, you don't want to draw from the fingers. You want to draw from the elbow or even the shoulder. These little movements are more jaggedy because they're shorter range. When you're making a sweeping movement with your whole arm, the chances of you misfiring are like a lot less. You might go off course a little bit, but it's going to feel pretty straight. So you kind of can practice, you know, practicing hitting those. And overall, they're going to read better as straight than you trying to go like. And I don't want to slow my drawing down by having to always use a ruler. I mean, honestly, being able to just do it on the fly is why we still freehand, and why freehand is many times still preferred when concepting, because you can just get the idea out faster on the fly with no software and no any other tools than just your hands. And sometimes you might be in a meeting, in a brainstorm meeting, and you need to be able to pop something out. Gotta keep in mind, I probably have a central point here. Good to know. Right? This gives me some sort of it's giving our eye that contour. So now we might start thinking a little bit like, what are these things? Are these shelves? Are these access points? You know, maybe they're just little ports, plugins. I don't know. circle template. Not always necessary, but again, those extra tight little perfections just look better. It adds up. Not saying you need to use the template all the time. You don't. But sometimes the precision that you get, it just feels better. Especially curved surfaces, right? Our brains are very good at detecting symmetry and echoing that curve, that shape language. This one's not. I'm going to keep this one a little more angular. Maybe this is some sort of submersed panel. Maybe we've got solar. Could have some sense of like solar panels. Remember, this is following the curve this way. We're setting eye level here as flat, so that means anything above this explain the technology wherever you can. It's easy to say, oh, the technology is better. They don't use what we use now. Therefore, I don't have to show it. People want to see how things work. They want to see the details, right? And sometimes we get so, what they call it, form over function, that you eliminate how the thing works and showing how the thing works because you're showing just how beautiful the overall form is. But sometimes, you know, especially when we're concepting, we have to over explain things to make it seem more real, more believable. It's almost like going with slightly older technology just because we can explain it better. And then, you know, as people catch up, I'm putting these little details in here. These are just details, right? We over-explain the technology because we're kind of waiting for us to get caught up. It's easy to go like, hey, here's a completely amorphous shaped object that it's a toothbrush. But if you can't see what the thing does and it's only going to be on screen for a short amount of time, they're going to be like, what was that thing? So the design has to convey what the function is, but of course, there is room in there to have a sense of modernism and a sense of technology. And that's the trick, right? How do you show the technological side, but show the function too? Definitely getting excited about this though, because now I'm kind of almost imagining what the interior is going to be now. Getting enough of this sort of gadgetry on the outside. then I'll be ready for an interior shot. Okay. The other consideration here too is, do I want to explore the design a little bit more? This is kind of one that I'm just having fun with, but doing more designs, more styles would be sort of another more exploration we would do. Because just because this is the one I'm kind of liking doesn't mean that's something that your client or the person you're working for is going to only want one option. And this is where they pay you to do that exploration. I'm on my time right now, so I'm just having fun with finding my way here a little bit. A sense of the technology. So I think we were talking about some sort of place where people park, or the hitching post. I don't know. But, there might be some strange creature that a guest might be riding, and they do need to tie it to something. Maybe there'd be these sort of additional little feeding bags. Sort of on the side here. You guys doing okay out there? Getting some work done? Or just chilling? It's getting pretty late. I'm going to probably wrap this one up for this sesh. This was fun. A fun time. It's a good exploration. Good to kick off the new season. And thinking maybe next time we'll explore the interior of this. This would be fun. Just to see what the inside of this thing might look like. So we could put a few more little deets here. Need to get a sharper point. There we go. That's one of the advantages too of working with a heavier pencil like this, is gives you steadier lines. And then of course you can get the kind of tip here, which you just don't get with your basic pencil sharpener. Oh yeah, I was going to throw in a few little doodad circles. Let's go for something really small. Woo! Tiny. I kind of feel like maybe there would be another window over here. A little bubble-ish. It's got these little bubble windows. little bits of okay. So I think what I'm going to do at this point, we've kind of gone from big view into some detail view, and I think what I'm going to do now is just throw a little more tone on it to bring out the contrast so I can read things a little bit more. And then let's do a little call outs too. Also wanted to emphasize back here a little bit that going to the pumping station, it's another little structure back here. I don't want to draw too much attention to it, but there is a building there. There is a structure there. Maybe there's a small window here. It has to feel like the same kind of architecture, but all right. And then, of course, we've got our suggestion of a pumping station or the well up here. Same kind of structure. Not going to go into detail. Going to leave a little bit of the silhouette here just to emphasize that there is a little bit of a structure up there. Same kind of style architecture. It's got a little bit of the surface stuff. Another one up there, but we have our rocks. More mountains that kind of trail off there. We had this little thing over here too. Not sure we knew what this was, but some other apparatus. I feel like I want one more structure over there too, just to widen things out a bit. Okay. So yeah, since we're over here using straight lines, let's give this thing a name. There you go. Little secondary line. Tertiary line. And then let's give myself a little line over here for my names too. And when you letter things, by the way, always good to use 2 sets of lines, not just one. Now, eventually, you'd probably typeset this once you scan it in. But, you know. Okay. How we doing? Everybody still with me? All right. Just going to go water this time. So again, I think this time I'm going to come back in with a little bit of marker, just to kind of bring in some contrast. Now that I have some, defined things that I have here, I'm going to, darken things in a little bit. Ooh, squeakies. Probably from the ground, there might even be a little bit of like soiling. So I'm picturing, the ground part of this, which is actually not facing up, will help accentuate the curvature as well if there's a little bit of tone here at the bottom. So it gets this hot spot like right about in here where the sun is sort of shining down, hitting the curve, but the more it curves, the less it faces the sun. So I'm going to put a little bit more shadowing here from the bottom side up. Just light, just to help boost the forms a little bit. Now I have some more silhouette shapes too underneath. I'm going to switch. This is a 30%. I'm going to jump to 20%. A little softer. That little drop shadow there looks pretty rad. On the beasties now. License to Ill. So again, now that we know where we're going, you can build up those tones a little bit more. Darken things in. Just giving a little pop. I'm not sure. These are probably going to be these kind of windows. Not sure if I want to go lighter or darker, like tinted windows or just sunlight windows. Emphasize the silhouette over here a little bit of our water tank, our well, up here on the hillside. And I suppose, you know, we could ink this, but, you know, I don't want to get into inking this thing because it's just an early sketch concept. You know, sometimes a little extra pop in a few places might help. Let's see what I got here. It's a 0.5. You know, just for silhouettes. So stuff like this. Right? Just helps it. And those really... just to give that a little bit of edge. I have these little holes which I'm picturing that these antennas pop out of. Let's give those a little bit of maybe the give that a little bit pop. This might help. Little cheats just to kind of help. Gives that a little dimension. right. I'm going to leave that one light. Maybe a little line in. Okay. I think we're going to call this one. It's getting late, so we'll call this if you really want to do this right, you should do sort of architectural style. So we'll do all the horizontals. Okay. So we'll do shepherds. Maybe we'll call it a hut. Kind of looks like a hut. Shepherd's hut. I'm not going to go hardcore here. We'll call it Shepherd's Hut. Give myself one more. So we'll say this is the, what do we call this? We called this the lower herd. Calling this lower herd.